Okay. Tonight we're going to delve into a short Rabbi Nachman story, but first it will be about this parsha. But we're gonna lead off with the Kotzker Rabbi. So we know this parsha is Tisa. There's a lot of things going on it, but there's a theme through part of it that we need to focus on. And there's the famous part. There's the parsha, the famous story of the golden calf. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down with the tablets, and he sees what's going on. They've created a golden calf. Aaron Cohen seemingly goes along with it. We understand that there's a ploy to keep Am Yisrael from destroying itself. People fighting over whether they should do this or not. So he allowed them to go astray. It was obvious. He said, tomorrow, right? Tomorrow we're going to have a Chag to Hashem. He knew that Moshe Rabbeinu was coming down. And Moshe Rabbeinu, smashes the tablets, or the tablets fall from Moshe Rabbeinu and they smash. And Moshe Rabbeinu goes back up. And in the process of going back up, he has a conversation with Hashem. And Hashem says the following. He says, my back you have seen, but my face you have not seen. Okay, my back you have seen, but my face you have not seen. And we know Hashem doesn't have a face like a human being. We know he has no construct like that. It's very clear that a lot of things are said in the Torah that they're clearly obvious analogies. But this is the ultimate one, because Hashem is using the language of people to get across a point. That even for Moshe Rabbeinu, he's not going to go to the pinimiyut, the actual real essence of Hashem. He can see the achorim, the back of Hashem, which we understand that there's different explanations of that, but we've discussed before Rabbi Nachman's whole point that the whole world is a covering of Hashem. That's how Hashem speaks to us through the world, right? That the achor, the back of Hashem, really is the creation itself. So Moshe Rabbeinu can go to the deepest parts of the creation, but he can't get to the pinimiyut, the actual essence of what it makes Hashem, the face of Hashem. The face we know is a corridor to our inner world, right? Our soul. So here is the language of panim, is the language of panai, my name, so my face, lo yeru, you will not see. My face, meaning my inner essence, you're not going to see. My inner essence, you're not going to see. So Hashem doesn't have a physical face. He's talking about his most internal part of what Hashem is. You're not going to see. You can go to the deepest part, Moshe Rabbeinu. No one's going to get further than you to understand how to read the creation, how to read what's going on, but you're not going to see my face. So Kotzker Rebbe says the following: Kol ma shenir'eh la'adam ba'olam hazeh k'devarim hafachayim. All that a person sees in the world, in this world, are like opposite things. Right? We see the achor, we see the back of Hashem, but also for ourselves. Right? Ko echad ve'echad medameh shetzarich li'ot kach or kach ze bechinat achorai nir lecho. Meaning, we're going to delve into this in a bit. Meaning that every person appears, when he appears to another person, it's really his back. And it's not his essence, it's not his self. Carl Jung, we talked about Carl Jung a little bit here or there. And Carl Jung describes this as the self versus persona. We see the other person's persona, their public persona. Right? But that's not who they really are. That's the thing which expresses themselves to the world, the way they want to position themselves in the world. Right? Very few people allow their self, the pinimiyut, their inner essence, to be expressed to the world. Because remember, all of us have a piece of Hashem blown into us. At the beginning of creation, that's what happened to Adam Rishon. Adam Rishon had that part of Hashem piece of Hashem blown into him. And therefore he, all of us, in a way, act like Hashem in a miniature. And just like Hashem doesn't show his essence to Moshe Rabbeinu, to anybody, we too, there's a part of us that we don't show our most darkest, our most inner secret self to everybody else. The mission of this world really is to break through the persona, that our public persona, don't allow that to be how we express ourselves, but rather have a once again, what Jung calls individuation, but what we call is a geula, inner redemption, is that part is like the integration of ourself to our persona, if that makes sense. And so that's what we're saying here. The Kutzker is saying that, I'll finish up, is Aval Bechinat Upanai Lo Yaru L'Shum Adam. Right? But the aspect of a person, the inner aspect of that person, once again, the Kutzker nails it, right? That we don't ever let ourself be expressed. Right? That we don't allow people to see. We guard that part of ourselves. The Kutzker is ahead on psychology, right? Like 100 years ahead of his time. Because he's saying, listen, that's the normal human trait. We just don't allow people in. We don't allow people to see who we really are. Or very few of us do. So I want to start off with that to lay groundwork. Because really, this is a huge foundational point that Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? The one's inner essence is guarded. It's guarded by that person. Hashem is the ultimate expression of that. All we can see in this world is Hashem's back. All we can see. We can't go further than that. We can only understand Hashem to a point. That's it. Now, I'm going to learn Rabbi Nachman's story, a relatively short story, because I think it's important. We'll get it. We'll get there. The Prince of Gems. It's a relatively famous story, but not, it's known. Once there was a king who did not have any children. He didn't have children. He did not want his kingdom to be inherited by strangers, so he went to physicians, but they could not help him. Then he made a decree: the Jews should pray that he should have children. The Jews sought out a tzaddik whose prayers would be effective in granting the king's children. They searched and found a hidden tzaddik and told him to pray that the king should have children. The tzaddik answered that he did not know anything. The Jews told this to the king. The king issued a royal edict, and the tzaddik brought to him. The king began to speak to him in a pleasant manner. Don't you realize that the Jews are in my hands? I can do anything I wish to them. But I'm asking you in a nice way to pray for me that I have children. The tzaddik promised him that he would have a child. He then left and returned home. The queen gave birth to a daughter. The queen's daughter was very beautiful. Now, in this story, we see that she's going to only be known as the queen's daughter. It's important. When she was 4 years old, she knew all types of wisdom. She could play musical instruments, and she knew all languages. From all lands, kings came to see her. The king was very happy. Afterwards, the king still yearned very much for a son, so his kingdom would not be passed on to a stranger. Again, he decreed that the Jews should pray that he have a son. They searched for the tzaddik, who prayed for the king the first time, but they could not find him since he was already dead. He did his job already, moved on. The Jews continued searching until they found another hidden tzaddik. They told him that he must provide the king with a son. The tzaddik replied that he did not know anything. He didn't know anything. When the Jews told this to the king, he did as before. He similarly told the tzaddik, the Jews are in my hand. The sage, as the tzaddik was called, asked the king, will you be able to do what I order? Yes, replied the king. The sage said, you must bring me every type of precious gem. Every precious stone has its own specific property. Kings have a book in which all precious stones are listed, and the king said, I am willing to give half my kingdom in order to have a son. Now remember, Ahasuerus says this to Esther, I'm willing to give half the kingdom to you. So it's an allusion to that. He brought forth all types of precious stones. The sage took these gems and ground them into powder. He then placed the powder in a cup of wine. He gave half the cup to the king to drink and half to the queen. He told them that they would have a son who consisted entirely of precious stones, and he would thus have the powers of every gem. With that, the sage returned home. The queen gave birth to a son, and the king was very joyous. However, when the son was born, he was not made of precious stones. Nevertheless, by the time he was 4 years old, he was beautiful. He was very beautiful and well versed in all types of wisdom. He knew all the languages, and kings came to see him. The queen's daughter realized that her status had diminished, and she was jealous. Her only consolation was that the tzaddik had said that the boy would be made completely of precious stones, and this had not been fulfilled. She was glad that her brother was not made of precious stones. Then one day the king's son was carving wood and injured his finger. When the queen's daughter ran to bandage the finger, she noticed a precious stone. There, she was very jealous. Precious stone there, and she was very jealous. And she made believe that she was sick. Many physicians came, but they were unable to cure her. Then sorcerers were summoned. Finally, she told one sorcerer the truth, that she was merely acting as if she was sick. She asked the sorcerer if she could cast a spell on a person to make him into a leper. Yes, he replied. What if she finds another sorcerer who can cancel the spell? She asked. Then he will be healed. The sorcerer said, if the charm is thrown into water, it cannot be annulled. She did this, casting a spell on her brother. Then she threw the charm into the water. The king's son became very leprous. Leprosy broke out on his nose, on his face, on the rest of his body. The king and physicians and sorcerers tried to cure the boy, but to no avail. Finally, he decreed that the Jews should pray. The Jews searched for the tzaddik, who had given the king his son, and brought him to the king. The tzaddik had been constantly praying to God since he had told the king that the prince would consist completely of precious stones, and this prediction had not yet been fulfilled. He argued before God, did I do this to enhance my own prestige? I did this for your glory. But now that what I predicted did not come true. The tzaddik came to the king and prayed for the boy, but to no avail. He was then told that a spell had been cast on the boy. This tzaddik had powers that were much higher than all types of sorcery. He informed the king that a spell had been cast and that the charm had been thrown into the water. The king's son could not be cured unless the sorcerer who had cast the spell was also thrown into the water. The king said, I will give you all the sorcerers to throw into the water so as to heal my son. The queen's daughter was very frightened. She knew where she had placed the charm, and she ran to the water to take it out. While she was trying to fish it out, she fell into the water. The fact that the queen's daughter had fallen into the water caused a great panic. Tzaddik came and told the people that the king's son would be healed. The king's son recovered, and the leprosy dried up and fell away. All his skin peeled off, and it was revealed that it consisted entirely of precious stones, just as the tzaddik had predicted. The king's son had the power of every precious stone. Short story, but we're going to try to delve into some understanding of it. There's a lot of layers to it, like every Rebbe Nachman story, and we're going to try to bring this right now in the next 10 minutes into some sort of finish to this idea. It's obviously the comparison of the idea that you see this boy, and the boy is covered over, right? And his real inner self has to go through some sort of trauma to come out. And that boy, in many ways, represents us in this world, the world that we go through, that we journey through, that we struggle with. And this understanding of the shadow realm. And I'm using Jungian terminology, but it's the same idea as the klipa. It's no difference, right? The klipa just represents the world of illusion, challenges, blockages, the satan, our opposing force inside of ourselves. From Rabbi Nachman's standpoint, the klipa is always in here. It's always what we have to break through in here. The klipa is an internal way of looking at the world that needs to be smashed down, a paradigm shift, right? That's the chidush. That's the sort of a psychological revolution that he inserts into Chassidut, where the world our world is how we actually look at the world. It's the perception that we give the world, and that's the inner klipa. That's the inner shadow realm, right? That we have to go through the klipot, these stages, these breakthroughs, these cognitive distortions. We have to let them go and break through them. Not only to do away with them, to draw some sort of learning experience from them, into our way of self-development. And through that process, that inner part of ourself, that's really who we are, that self that we've been sort of hidden away through all of our childhood and in our adulthood, begins to come out, begins to actually express itself. The inner self is that part of ourself that is really yearning to be close to the Creator, yearning to actually serve Him in pure truth. And that the boy here in this story, he has it all in the beginning, just like the daughter of the queen, who represents the shadow. If we're going to look at break it down we're bringing down Jungian psychology because I think his archetypal concepts are very correlative to how we tend to look at the Chassidut. and that the shadow, and there's the shadow of the self and the persona, and the shadow, actually, there's parts of us in that shadow that we need to pull out. Just like we learn in Chassidut, there's parts of us hidden in the klipa that we have to pull out. But there's a point in time we have to let the negative energy go. Let that part of ourselves that's holding ourselves back, jealousy, right? We see jealousy in this story. She's jealous. The queen's daughter is jealous of the brother. Meaning the self, which is really what the brother is. That's our self, our real self. That part of us which is the shadow, that part of us which is the klipa, that part of us which is the sitra achra, which is keeping sparks there that need to be lifted up, the potential that we all have, falls into a realm which is like, jealousy, hate, anger, resentment. But there's parts of it that we need to pull out of that realm into the service of the Creator, and only then our self will be fully expressed. And so there's no movement. The precious stones really don't show up at the end on the boy until she falls. The queen's daughter falls into the water, because that's what this is all about. This world is about, right? Even though the Kutzker says we never really get a chance to see who the other person really is, deep down inside, there are times when that can happen. And our mission here is to allow our real self to be actualized and activated in order to actually do better at allowing others to see who we really are, and not always walk around in that sort of false persona, or at least the veneer. And that's the precious gems. Each one of us is the boy. Each one of us has precious gems hidden within. This is what Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 282, the Nekudot Tovot, that each one of us has these sparks of goodness inside of us that we have to find, that we have to actually clarify in us, and we have to be able to try to see in other people. Those are the gems. Those are the gems hidden within. Those gems, that's who we really are. Those points of goodness are who we really are. That's what we brought down here. And now that's like the lost princess. We have to go now find her. But they're hidden within us. That's the key point here. And we don't have to go far for any of this stuff. We don't have to go travel far. The traveling's all here. The traveling's all here. That's the Chidush of Rabbi Nachman. That's the actual new way of looking at it, the world. That we don't have to go far. That the journey's in here. The journey is the psychological manifestations of our struggle and how we break through things and concepts and how we look at the world. And that's what this whole story is about. That's what our story is about. And that's what this ultimate parsha is about. Because ultimately, how Am Yisrael looks at the world, I mean, at the point where they make the Egel Zahav, the golden calf, is they're looking at the world in a very convoluted way. That God is some sort of thing, this deity that they sort of actively pray to. And some people said that was Moshe Rabbeinu, that they sort of messed up. They lost Moshe Rabbeinu. They weren't really replacing God. They just needed some sort of thing to reach out to. And that was what all that, up until that point, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was for them. After Egel Zahav, their relationship changes to him, right? Because then he becomes like the leader he's really supposed to, because they've learned their lessons, so to speak, perhaps. And the Egel Zahav really, it correlates to this, because we see that each one of us has an Egel Zahav that we're chasing after. This is the false notions. It's the false way to look at the world. It's the klipa, once again, klipa only being a terminology to describe the cognitive bias or distortion in our lives. That we're ultimately always racing after the shadow, always racing after where the shadow brings us. Or Rabbi Nachman talks in Sichot Doran, where the light, the false way of looking at the world, Sitra Achra, the Zahara, it's all the same concept. It's analogous to a ray of light coming in. And we think it's real, and we go reach out to touch it, and we see there's really nothing. Or a shadow, nothing. And that's ultimately the shadow is. The shadow inside of us. The shadow inside of us holds that truth, but holds it in a way that is distorted. So we'll finish up with an idea, and we're gonna go back to the Parsha, that we live in a world that's covered over. The Western world is trying to twist what everything's about. And it draws us towards the shadow, right? That part of ourselves which is decadent and rude and obnoxious and and gets caught up in all sorts of things that we shouldn't be caught up in. The Western world tries to enable the shadow, or enable, let's say, the klipa, enable the cognitive distortions that lie deep within us, that we have to actually clarify to move on, and actually have self-discovery and self-actualization. That's what the Western world wants to do. And the end of days, where we're standing right now, it's all an illusion. It's all distortion. It's all disruption into how we need to look at the world, which is a world of godliness. I always go back to this. Ish Israeli, Sarich Listakel Ba'olam, right? An Israelite has to look at the world and find the intellect in everything, the godly intellect in everything. Because the pnimiyut, the inner aspect of ourselves, requires us to actually find who we are in this world. But we first have to do something, and that's what's going on right now. We'll finish up with this pasuk, this verse. Elokei masecha lo ta'aselach. Right? The right? Mask. Mask of God, the God mask, right? Not Hashem. You will not make for yourself. You'll not make a mask for yourself, right? An idol, which is a mask, because that's what they used to do. The Canaanites used to put masks on. That's one of their observers. You'll not make a mask for yourself. Amazing, huh? It's a forbidden thing to do, is put a mask on. Now we don't porn we do put masks on, but that's another reason. It's so clear that it's okay. But here it's talking about a one who worships one of these masks as a god and puts it on. And it's very fitting at the end of days that we have this issue, that we are so much want to find who we are inside, yet we're told by the world to put a mask on. They like worship the mask. And we shall be shall merit to drop the mask and have teach other people to drop the mask and allow their gems, which really exist inside of themselves, to come out. And for that, what they have to do is allow the princess. So in this case, which is interesting, the princess in the lost person is good. The princess here represents the shadow, and the inner shadow, just like the princess here, they have to allow her to fall away. We show merit to live in a world of truth, to live in a world of self-actualization, and continuously pull off our masks. God bless. Shabbat shalom.
Amen.